Dean Curry here, Fantasy Football, RSVP. So let's get right to it for Week 2 Waiver Wire. Where are we going to go as far as who's available? Not who would be a good play, but who might be available on your waiver wire. I have a funny feeling that if you look up Matthew Stafford, he's going to be available on your waiver wire. He was iffy to start the season. What kind of offense are they going to throw? People don't realize he was kind of injured last year, and now he's coming back. And, he's got a trio of good receivers now that he's got Danny Amendola out there with Marvin Jones and Galladay. Their running game is pretty good. Their defense is pretty solid. They're going to get a lot of opportunities. Moreover, I thought Matthew Stafford looked like Matthew Stafford. It winded up being a tie that game. I think they went to sleep on the Cardinals and let them back in that game. They had it won and just stopped playing because they were completely annihilating the Cardinals, and they looked completely on tilt. And, a couple of plays, they let him back in the game. They played a softer defense. This team started getting confidence, but they were really, really rolling. It's too bad for Detroit. It ended in a tie because they really had this team on the ropes. And they were hitting on all cylinders. And Matthew Stafford, I think, is going to have a really surprising year. So if he's available on your waiver wire, I would definitely pick him up. I mean, I'd mention Lamar Jackson, but chances are, in your league, he was taken, in the draft. Obviously. So he's not worth mentioning. But if for some reason he's available in any of your leagues, it's going to be, who's higher ranked on the waiver wire. You definitely want him to be your first pick. But chances are, I thought an interesting game this week was the Washington Redskins because they were going up against, the Eagles, and the Eagles have a very, very good defense. And, a lot of people were not expecting with Casey Keenum at quarterback, and, Darius Geis went out early in that game with a knee injury. And they really played the Eagles extremely competitive. Moreover, and more importantly, Casey Keenum looked really, really good. And, their receivers looked a little better than I thought they would look. A lot of people don't realize, last year, this team was actually doing pretty well the first half of the season before their entire offensive line, basically went down. And that caused a ton of problems, even though Adrian Peterson was able to, have a decent year. They had quarterback problems, because their quarterback, as went down last year. And their offensive line was just decimated, and it just, they had so many injuries last year, and people don't realize it's kind of an underrated team. The defense was pretty decent those first 8 games, and their offense wasn't too bad, and I wasn't shocked to see them do well. What I was a little shocked or surprised by was not totally surprised because I don't think Casey Keenum's really been given, the chance to continually play with one team over years and years. But I really thought he looked, he was throwing up all over the place and almost threw for 400 yards. They threw it 45 times, 44 times. And, 30 for 44 for 380 yards. Not bad. And he, went up against a really good team, and they almost pulled off that win. So I think, though, that said, the reason why I think he's a good play here is we kind of think outside the box here. Not just with numbers and analytics, but game trends and things of that nature. And, it's one thing we do here at our company is we try to give you an advantage on thinking about things you don't normally hear in these types of podcasts. And one of the things you have to think of is game scripts. It looks like the Redskins are going to be behind in a lot of games. Now Geis is out, Adrian Peterson coming in. But it looks like they're going to be playing from behind quite a bit, and they're going to be throwing the ball. Last game they threw it 45 times, 44 times. And I think that's going to be a similar script because they're going to be behind and they're not going to be able to run the ball as much as they, would like to. And they like to throw the ball out of the backfield to, Chris Thompson and things like that. And in a PPR league, I think that this is a really sneaky pick. You're going to actually do pretty well here. That's pretty good as far as quarterbacks. As far as running backs are concerned, I think Tariq Cohen, if he's available, chances are he may not be. But if he's available, I would definitely look him up. But I would also maybe pick up Casey Keenum, and pick up as a running back Chris Thompson, because there's a chance Chris Thompson coming off an injury is available on your waiver wire. And that's, in a PPR league, and most of the advice I give is based on PPR because a lot of the leagues are turning to PPR now. So you have to forgive me, standard leagues. Be too difficult to go back standard league, PPR league. So, so make the adjustments accordingly. But most of the advice I give is based on PPR. But a nice stacking play when you put a quarterback with a catching running back or tight end or, something to that degree. I really like the Chris Thompson play with Casey Keenum. I think they're both going to put up, decent numbers. They're probably going to abandon the running game where they're just handing it off to Adrian Peterson because Geis is going to be out for a while. But they're not going to abandon the short passing game to Chris Thompson if they're behind. And that's like a nice stacking play. If Casey Keenum's numbers are good, so is, Chris Thompson's. Same with Matthew Stafford. If you picked up a tight end like TJ Hawkinson, who had a big game last game, 6 for 131, it looks like they're going to use their tight end. It looks like they have good receivers. They're really focused on a balanced attack. And, I think Matthew Stafford always liked throwing to his tight ends, and I think this TJ Hawkinson's got a lot of speed. I think that's going to be a nice play because I think if Matthew Stafford, I think he's going to be playing from behind quite a bit, and he's going to have to play catch up, and they're not going to run the ball as much. This is going to be a nice play because he was spreading it around to everyone, all three receivers, tight end, and I think that, that would be like a really, really nice play. As far as running backs are concerned, you might want to look at Rex Burkhead. I know, they have other running backs on the team, but they were using him, in the passing game, 5 for 41. And, he ran the ball 8 times too for 44 yards. And he, I know Belichick really likes him and he's gotten injured through the years. So you might want to look at Rex Burkhead as like a nice little sneaky play. Another nice play is Malcolm Brown if Todd Gurley gets injured because they're already using Malcolm Brown, a lot. You could get some points out of him. He had 2 touchdowns. Ran, for a few as well. And in case Todd Gurley is a handcuff, it might be a nice play. As far as other tight ends, Mark Andrews of the Ravens looks like, and they have other tight ends on that team, but they were really kind of showcasing Mark Andrews. That trend might continue because it's a nice dump-off play for their quarterback, Lamar Jackson. As far as wide receivers, I really think you should take a look at Michael Gallup. I talked about him before the season started. He caught 7 passes for over 100 yards last game, and it looks like they're really spreading the ball around. And, I think he's for the Dallas Cowboys, I think he's a really nice play because, Cooper gets a lot of attention. And, Cobb too, and it just looked like he was, I think Dak Prescott took a step forward. I told you he would. And Michael Gallup, I think, is going to be a really, really nice play for them. I'd mentioned DeSean Jackson, but, for the Eagles, I was mentioning him all year. But I think probably he's picked up on most of your waiver wires already. If he's not, I actually like him catching the ball more than I like Alshon Jeffrey. And I was saying that before the season started. And it's no accident he had more catches and more yards than DeSean, than the other wide receiver. And as far as I really like DeSean Jackson. So as far as another wide receiver, you might want to look at Danny Amendola. He had a big game. They were spreading the ball around. I know they have Marvin Jones and Galladay and all this, but I think that team's going to be passing a lot this year, and I think they're going to be playing from behind, so they'll have no choice. Might be a nice sneaky play. I also like John Ross of the Bengals, at least until A.J. Green comes back. I thought he looked really, really good. I mean, I'm not really big on wide receivers outside of A.J. Green with Dalton as quarterback. And not so much that it's anything against Dalton, but that team is very inconsistent. And they go up and down. They have a lot of question marks on defense, although the defense played pretty well last week. The team's just got a lot of question marks. Their running game seems pretty good. Their passing game seems a little inept with A.J. Green out, but I kind of liked the way John Ross played last week. I would keep an eye on it, but they threw to him quite a bit, and at least until A.J. Green, walks in, it might be a guy to have on your team and eventually trade him if he has another big week. But I really like him. I like John Brown and Marquise Brown of Buffalo and the Ravens. Marquise Brown, I thought his targets were low. I mean, he had like 147 yards receiving, but I thought his target share was low. But John Brown of Buffalo, I have a feeling that team is going to be behind on a lot of games too. And although Allen, the quarterback's developing, and I'm hesitant on any receivers for the Buffalo Bills, I gotta believe they're going to be behind quite a bit. So, and John Brown looked really good last week, and they talked a lot about him, coming into the season, being healthy. As far as guys maybe you shouldn't play, I would pump the brakes a little on Larry Fitzgerald if he's available. Great receiver, all-time receiver, but their quarterback, looked pretty awful to start to start off, and I would just be a little careful there because eventually they look better and the quarterback looked better, and Fitzgerald's numbers look good at the end. But I think that was just more matter of the Lions playing a softer defense, and they were basically preventing defense, which I'm so surprised people still play this defense, because you just see teams start getting confidence and coming back, and they always say it prevents you from winning. It's so true. So I would be careful of Larry Fitzgerald. I'd also be careful of DJ Metcalf, the Seattle. Just a little shaky on their receivers and his health, so I'd be a little careful there. As far as defenses, you might want to go with the Patriots or actually the Bills' defense against the Giants is actually a really nice play this week. Also, the defense I really like this week is the Cowboys against the Redskins. I think the Redskins will be behind a lot, but I think the Cowboys' D will get pressure on them. They looked, very good against the Giants. And I think the Cowboys' defense, against the Redskins, or the Bills' defense against the Giants, are two really good plays. The Giants, they didn't really look that good. They're short on their receivers. If I had to pick one, I'd probably pick the Cowboys' defense over the Redskins. I think that's a really good play. In the following week, they play the Dolphins. So you could have the Cowboys defense for 2 weeks. And as far as, kickers, I really like Jason Myers of Seattle. I like picking kickers that play on a decent offense that has a hard time putting the ball in the end zone. And granted, Jason Myers only put up 3 points last week because they scored 3 touchdowns. But I have a funny feeling Seattle has a really good running game, and their passing game, their receivers might be a little thin. Lockett and Metcalf, they have something going on. But I think because of that, they're going to have a little bit of a hard time. And they'll get opportunities with their defense, a little bit of a hard time putting the ball in the end zone. And that's kind of what you want. So although Jason Myers of Seattle had a rough week, I think he's going to be a good kicker to have on your team this year because of their inability to get in the end zone. So that's pretty much it for week 2 of fantasy football. Waiver wire coming up. Think of some of these choices. I think they're going to work out great for you. Have a wonderful season, and so have yourself a wonderful day.